Hey there, welcome back to my kitchen. This week I do have some comfort meals for you. In my book, these are all comforting foods. They were all so good. It's finally starting to cool down here in Arizona and I was just ready for these types of meals. I'm ready to start making more soups and stuff. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let's go ahead and get into it. Getting started today, we're gonna make these garlic butter cheddar chicken tenders. I just started by preheating my oven to 400 degrees and then over to my little cutting board here. I am using chicken breast just because that's what I already had in my freezer, but you can use chicken tenders as well. Since I'm using chicken breast, I'm just going to cut those into strips and then some of them will be a little thicker, so I will cut them in half again. Now into this bowl, I'm adding in 1 cup of panko breadcrumbs, a 1/4 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, just like the kind you use on spaghetti, a 1/2 teaspoon of parsley, 1/2 teaspoon of oregano, a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and about a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then I'm adding in 1 cup of mild cheddar cheese that has already been shredded, and then giving this a really good stir to combine. In this next bowl, I have 1 stick of butter that I just melted in the microwave, and then I mixed in 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder into that. I'm going to take my chicken strip and then dip it into that garlic butter, and then directly into that breadcrumb and cheese mixture and coat it really well. Once it's covered, I'm just transferring it over to a baking sheet. I lined it with parchment paper so it would be easy cleanup and to help it not stick to the pan. Once I dipped all my chicken strips, this is all I had left in here, so I just went ahead and spooned it over the top, and I figured it would just cook on while it was baking. I stuck these in the oven to bake for right around 10 minutes until they reached at least 165 degrees. Here's what they look like coming out of the oven. The cheese in the breading really helps meld it down onto the chicken, so all that extra I put on top really did stay connected to the chicken really well, which was awesome. Here is my finished plate of food. I just made some green beans to go with these and some roasted potatoes. These chicken strips have a ton of flavor. They are so good. My husband really liked them as well. I will definitely be adding these into our rotation. They were so easy, which made these even better. Now we're gonna make this cheesy veggie and chicken soup. Into a nice big pot on my stove, I just added in about 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I let that heat up and then I'm adding in 1 chicken breast that I sliced in half. I'm just gonna lightly season that with a little bit of salt and pepper. In total, I'm actually going to cook 2 chicken breasts, but there will be 4 pieces, so after I finished off these ones, I did go ahead and add my other chicken breast in there and cooked it up as well. Once your chicken is fully cooked, go ahead and let that rest on a cutting board for about 5 minutes and then chop it up into nice tiny bite-sized pieces. Leave that pot on the stove because we're going to reuse it. You will need to chop up 1/2 of a yellow onion, and you will need about 1 cup of chopped celery. I keep mine frozen, that's why it looked like that. And then I'm also adding in 1 cup of shredded carrots. Now that the chicken is all done, I am going to add all 3 of those ingredients into my pot. I'm going to let these cook for about 5 to 10 minutes until they are nice and tender and they start to develop some color on them. Next, I'm adding in about 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. I'm going to let that cook for another 30 seconds or so, and then we're going to add in some chicken broth. I actually was a little shorter than I thought on chicken broth. You actually need about 7 cups of chicken broth. In total, I only was able to add 5. So my soup was not really a soup, it got a lot thicker, which was totally fine with us. But make sure if you want this to be a soup that you do add that full 7 cups of chicken broth. You will also need to add in 8 ounces of softened cream cheese and a 1/2 cup of heavy whipping cream. At this point, I'm just going to try to break that cream cheese apart a little bit and get it all incorporated. And then once it comes to a boil, you're going to add in your pasta. Any small pasta will do. I had about 1.5 cups of the ditalini pasta. It's nice and small. I'll type it out on the screen for you. And then to get to the 2-cup mark, I just put some orzo in there and it cooked perfectly fine together. Once your pasta is just about all the way cooked, you can go ahead and add in some spinach. Feel free to use fresh spinach. I never keep fresh spinach on hand though, just because I don't go through it quick enough. So I went ahead and added in about 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of frozen spinach. Go ahead and just let that spinach cook down in here. And then I'm also going to add some salt and pepper to taste. All of the chopped chicken, and then about 1 cup to 1.5 cups of shredded mild cheddar cheese. Go ahead and give that a good toss together and let the cheese completely melt down. Like I said, mine turned out to be a little thicker than I really wanted it to be, but that's just because I was short on my chicken broth, so as long as you have a lot of chicken broth, you're good to go. But I'm not gonna lie, eating it like this was just as good. It was like a really thick macaroni and cheese with vegetables in it, and believe it or not, my husband even ate 2 bowls, and he did not mind the vegetables in here at all. All the cheese really masked the taste of the vegetables, so he really liked it, and I bet your kids might like this one too, just because they're all covered in cheese. This meal was probably my favorite out of the entire week. We're making a creamy butternut squash with some chicken thighs. You will need to preheat your oven to 375 degrees. To start, I have a butternut squash that weighed about 1 pound. It was just a little bit over at the store when I weighed it. I'm cutting off the 2 ends just a little bit, and then I'm going to peel the entire thing. Once it's peeled, I'm slicing it right down the center, and I'm just taking a spoon to remove all of those seeds. Once all of the insides are removed, you can go ahead and just cube this entire thing up. Try to make them as even as possible though, that way they cook evenly in the oven. Once those are all cubed up, I'm just adding them over to a baking sheet with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. To season up this butternut squash, I'm just using 1.5 tablespoons of thyme, a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then I'm also going to add some of this Kinder's buttery steakhouse seasoning. You cannot go wrong with butter flavor. With this, I'm probably adding about 1 teaspoon to 1.5 teaspoons. And then I'm just taking a spoon to really stir this all together and make sure that the seasoning is covering every bit of this butternut squash. This is going in the oven to bake for 15 minutes. At that 15-minute mark, you will just want to give them a good stir and then put them back in the oven for 15 more minutes until they are nice and fork tender. Now over into a skillet, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of butter along with about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. I'm going to let that heat up while I get my chicken thighs ready. On this cutting board, I have 4 chicken thighs. I did go ahead and trim off some of the extra fat just because I don't like that, but you can leave it on if you want to. And now I'm going to season up both sides of these chicken thighs with smoked paprika, garlic powder, more of this buttery steakhouse seasoning, because like I said, you definitely can't go wrong with that butter flavor, Italian seasoning, pepper, and salt. Once I get those seasoned, I'm going to add them into my melted butter and olive oil, and then I'm going to go ahead and cook these chicken thighs all the way through. Once all 4 of my chicken thighs are cooked, I'm just going to set those aside for right now. And into this same pan, we definitely don't want to lose all that flavor. So I'm going to add in 1 cup of orzo in there with about 1.5 tablespoons of minced garlic. I am just going to cook these in here for about 2 to 3 minutes on a higher heat. And I'm just going to allow the orzo to get some color on it before we move on. Next, add in 2 cups of chicken broth, 1/2 cup of frozen spinach. I'm just using my spoon to kind of break that spinach apart, and I'm also going to scrape the bottom and make sure I get anything that is stuck to the bottom of the pan. I'm going to let this cook until all of the liquid has been absorbed, and then we're going to add in 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. Once you have that combined, go ahead and add in your butternut squash. Your butternut squash should definitely be done at this point. Like I said, you just want to make sure that it is fork tender, and then just gently get this combined with the orzo. Finally, you can add back in your chicken thighs. If your chicken thighs sat out for a minute, go ahead and just add a lid on this and let everything just kind of warm through on a low heat. But if your chicken thighs are still nice and hot, you can just add them in and it's ready to serve. This dinner was absolutely delicious. I ate way too much of it by myself. My husband did try it and he liked it. Again, I was shocked because he does not like vegetables or squash or anything like that. So I was very surprised that he liked this one. So again, if you're not big on vegetables, I would definitely recommend trying this one out because the flavor was phenomenal. If you made it all the way to the end, first of all, I just want to say thank you so very much. I truly appreciate your time here. If you did make it all the way to the end, leave me a flower down in the comments below, and I will see you guys back here on Wednesday. Bye!